Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
For the identity of the real Marty Levinson, stay tuned to the Northtown News Magazine.
Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Back to that lemon light city, Sweet Hope, Chicago. 2 is 4, 4 4 6. Come on, baby, now get your business fixed. Come on, honey, don't you?
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show with the greatest cameraman around, Sonny Hirsch, and your host of all hosts, Avi Myers.
Thank you, Marty. Avi Myers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. Dial us up on the World Wide Web at www.ntnm.org. We're really big on community policing, and you know what? Even if it's not manned as strongly as it used to be, there still is a CAPS. If you come to the meetings, you will still get to meet police officers from the district and the police officers that are attending, that do patrol the streets. So we urge you to still stick in there with CAPS. Maybe the new mayor, whoever that's going to be, is going. And by the way, at this point, we're filming before the election, and this is the Thursday after the election, Thursday, February 24th. So I have no idea who the new mayor is or who's in the runoff, but I certainly hope whoever it is extremely interested in expanding the police department and rebuilding CAPS. And speaking of CAPS, and we are going to have our first non-political guest over here in about 37 years, it feels like. And, we like to touch base with them more often, but it is a pleasure to have somebody from the neighborhood who basically grew up in the 24th District and assumed all sorts of interesting positions, including the Neighborhood Relations Sergeant for the 90s. It was instrumental in the founding of CAPS in the Pioneer District. Now Deputy Chief of the Area 3 of the Chicago Police Department, Deputy Chief Bruce Rottner. How are you?
Avi, I'm great. Thank you for having me.
First of all, thank you, and it's always a pleasure. And it's good. It's good to see good people in positions like yours.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate that. I've never strayed far from the neighborhood here, so it's like coming home every time I'm here.
Yeah, and by the way, as long as I remember and I want to do this, of course, since we've actually done a show last time and talked about the police, unfortunately, Steve Cohn has taken retirement. And
well, from his perspective, I don't know if it's unfortunate, but from our perspective, it may be. So
yeah, basically, he was when Hank retired, he was doing two people's jobs by you.
Yeah, he really was. Steve and I go way back. In fact, we went to high school together, and Steve and Hank just did a tremendous job for us. They were old school police officers who were able to capture the essence of community policing. They were both Rock'em Sock'em tactical officers back in the 19th District. They came to the 24th District in the 80s and were two street police officers, tough, savvy, smart. And back in 1993, when we started community policing, I asked them to come into the Neighborhood Relations Office, now known as the Community Policing Office, because we were starting the CAPS meetings. So we knew the officers would be coming to CAPS meetings. We hadn't really at that point trained our officers to go to a meeting and talk to people. So I wanted two officers who the other officers really respected to be in there. And I brought them in '93 and they just never left, But then when I went over to Area 3, I asked them to come and work on a more global platform in Area 3. So they were basically my eyes and ears in the afternoon. They would go all CAPS meetings throughout the whole area, which is comprised of 4 districts. And they're just wonderful people, and not only great policemen, but personally very close friends, and just, and they both earned everything they had and have earned hopefully healthy, long retirements.
Yeah, they're both great guys, and they definitely mentored me in what to do, what not to do, how to do things correctly, how to be of most service to the community.
Sure.
And by the way, Steve actually showed up at a couple of CAPS meetings after he retired by me, which I thought was very, I liked that.
I hope he wasn't yelling at the police or anything.
No.
I know he wouldn't do that.
No, he definitely wouldn't do that. And one thing, Steve's a great guy, and we still send each other jokes.
That's great. That's great.
So, you know what? With all the stuff that's going on with CAPS, and of course, what is going on with CAPS right now?
Well, you know, I think that every city in the United States had to take a really hard, long look at you know, their economic positions. Chicago was no different. We had some tough choices to make, and one of the choices we had to make was putting more police officers back on the street. I enjoyed a period of time when I was in community policing of having at one time 7 officers, 5 on the day shift, 2 on the night shift in there. But again, with dwindling resources, with our economic, again, positions, we just couldn't afford to do that anymore, and something had to take a hit. Our objective, obviously, in policing is manning our beat cars, providing service to the citizens who pay taxes for those services. And with that being said, the police officers in community policing are all police officers. So we had to take from someplace. That was one of the places we took them from. We would hope, though, since community policing really started up here in 24 in 1993 and in the other districts in 1994, that it's become ingrained in our culture. Every class going through the police academy since that time has been fully trained in community policing. So, you know, we don't want to create something where we have community policing, we have real policing. Community policing is part of policing in Chicago today. And that was really our goal from day one. We have less personnel in the CAPS offices or in the community policing offices, but we don't see anything really suffering, and especially in a district like 24, which has such a terrific foundation laid, like by former leaders like Tom Byrne and like Dave Boggs, who were former commanders up here.
Great, absolutely outstanding people together with yourself, the 3 best commanders I've experienced.
Well, thank you. And again, they took that very seriously. I think they took community policing to a whole new level. You know, I may be, you know, a little bit prejudiced toward the 24th District, obviously, but be that as it may, I think we laid a really strong foundation where you know, you as a beat facilitator, some of the other beat facilitators, Dane Rovnick, Eva McCann, I can go on and on, just are wonderful people who are still engaged, still involved in community policing. And with that being said, you know, community policing is not going to go away. It's part of our culture now.
No, and I'm glad to see that, and I'm certainly hoping that when economic times get better, or, you know, whoever the mayor is going to be, if he's got a priority, you know, it's funny because it's happened in steps. And of course the city's hurting, so you can't have everything. But, you know, I was talking earlier with Richard Gonzalez, who actually was a community policing guy on Wood Street. Mm-hmm. He was the B team leader. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about how wonderful it was. But, of course, this was not the last cut. But when people from the first, second, and third shifts could all be there together, not just because, and it was so cool, that people who talked about a specific problem within the beat, it was almost certain that one of the officers from the 3 shifts were actually there, and it was terrific for these people. But the fact is that the police themselves could interchange information between the shifts, and it definitely helped.
And you know, Avi, that still goes on. I mean, you know, we don't operate in a vacuum. We have 3 shifts or watches, as we call them, in the Chicago Police Department. You know, the first watch is the midnight watch, and the second watch is the day watch. The third watch is the afternoon watch, where we put most of our manpower because that's the busiest time, normally between 8 at night and midnight. But the officers, when they get off, when they relieve another officer, talk about problems, talk about concerns. Sergeants make sure that they're doing that. So, you know, that communication is not lost because, you know, we don't have all 3 watches at a CAPS meeting. Officers are still talking to each other, exchanging information. We've kind of institutionalized that process. So it's something that really continues, even though we've, again, minimized the amount of people in community policing.
Oh, you know what? One thing I want to ask you, too, you've also got 2 of my other favorite officers over there. Lieutenant Holman and Sergeant Welble.
Yes. Well, Sergeant Welble, Dave Welble, retired on November 18th.
Oh, I didn't know that. I
He
want to wish you a
retired.
lot of luck.
It's a revelation for him. Dave retired after almost 29 years of service to the police department. He again not only was just an outstanding police officer, but he's also my best friend. And I miss seeing Dave every day at the office and his wisdom and his knowledge. Dave did a lot for us. Don Holman, as you said, Lieutenant Holman is back in the 24th District. Don is a watch commander on the second watch, on the day watch. And a lot of things go on during the day. While I said we put most of our manpower at night, there's still a lot of things that happen during the day that we need, qualified, highly competent people. And Don certainly fills that bill. So he's working days there, and that's kind of a relief to me because I know that I can call Don if I need something. Don, as you know, worked in my office for about a year. Don is a tremendous tactician and operations guy, and was able to put together some of our events that we have in the area, although not necessarily in this community, but the Gay Pride Parade in the 23rd District, the July 4th celebration we had last year. Those take a tremendous amount of planning, of logistics skills and things like that. And Don was really, really terrific in doing those things.
By the way, I'd also like to point out, not to interrupt it, he was my community policing sergeant for many years.
Yes, he was. So Don has a very, firm grasp of community policing, and again, what the goals are of community policing. And Don is just wonderful with people. He knows how to talk to people, and we stress communication in the police department. If you know how to use this, you don't have to use this. That's what I always say. And one thing we really try or we do train our police officers in is communicating with people, just talking to people. That's what it's all about, really.
By the way, to this day, one of our top ranked shows of all time was the National Night Out show when you were the commander.
Okay.
And we had the outdoor roll call in Edgewater.
Right. And that's something that I believe they continue doing. Outdoor roll calls are very popular because they show not only our support for the community, but it lets our police officers see community support for the police officers. We normally get, 40, 50, 100 people at these outdoor roll calls. And, they're just terrific. And some people say, well, they're simply symbolic. But they're not really symbolic. They send, a message not only to the community, but to the bad guys as well. And that's what we're trying to do.
As a matter of fact, after this interview, both of us, together with Sonny probably, are heading to an outdoor roll call over at Warren Park.
Yes, right. And again, it's a strategy that we use, and we don't do it necessarily after a terrible incident, a shooting or something like that. We do them throughout the district, and again, it's just to show our support for the community and let our officers see community support for them.
And it makes a difference. I know in the beginning of community policing, because I was actually a police reporter, now not a court reporter, but I was actually a reporter reporting on the police, as early as the 70s at the Town Hall District. I covered it for a neighborhood newspaper there. I also wrote grisly 26th and California stories for the Daily Defender, and I also used to cover the old 20th District on Foster Avenue as the editor-in-chief of the Commerce, and I did a lot of the stories myself. And one of the biggest differences I've seen over time, and I think community policing was instrumental in this, is I remember after the Democratic Convention, and the first time I was a reporter that had a police car in my card, I was still going to college then, but it was in 1972. And if I parked at that time on the street and had the police car out there, whether I was violating the law or not, it was an invitation to certain people who still had a grudge to write me a ticket.
Right.
And the friendly, there was a suspicion, there was a hesitancy between the community, from the community to the police, and the police to the community.
Sure.
And this has built tremendous bridges.
Well, it really has. I mean, in 1972, the year I came on the police department, at this point, I have grandchildren, a police officer I worked with, working up in 24. We had just come out of the turbulent 60s. We were getting a lot of federal money for community programs, but we really didn't know how to crystallize them. We just thought that maybe putting outposts with policemen in there would help us. To a certain degree, it started, but it really wasn't formalized until we started the Chicago Alternative Policing Strategy. And, it was kind of like when President Nixon went to China and realized there's all these Chinese, people in the world here, and for years we kind of disavowed any knowledge of them. Well, it's the same thing, We finally realized that we can't complete our task, our mission, without the community helping us. We just can't do it. I mean, that'll never happen unless we have the community with us, and not necessarily loving us. Not everybody's going to love us. I mean, that's just the way of the world. But not everyone loves everybody else. But, most, and when I say most, the vast majority of people like the police. They respect the police. They understand that we're that thin blue line between us and those who may want to harm us. And we constantly stress that to our officers. And most of our officers are aware of that 95% of people like them, respect them, and that's a good situation, And I think that's pretty consistent all over the city, not just up here in West Rogers Park or in 24 and Area 3. So, community policing only enhanced that and finally got police officers to sit down and talk directly to citizens. I remember a meeting that we had right before we rolled out community policing in 1993, and Chuck Ramsey, who was kind of the architect of community policing back then.
I liked him a lot.
Chuck Ramsey, who's currently the police chief in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, had a meeting at Warren.
I didn't realize. He was also in Washington, D.C.
He was in Washington, and then he's in Philadelphia now. But he was going to a series of meetings in the 5 prototype districts, of which 24 was one. And he had a huge meeting up at Warren Park, and I went because I lived in the community. I didn't go as a policeman, And he said something very simple and very eloquent. He said, how many of you know the names of the police officers that protect your families, that patrol your homes? And I worked in 24, and I couldn't even raise my hand. I lived in 24 at the time. And he said, well, don't you think you should? And it was a very simple, eloquent, but powerful statement, that you should know the name of the beat officer working around your house, and that's one of the goals of community policing, was put the same police officers on the same beats for a year at a time. Now, because of union concessions, because of the ability for officers to transfer, to move, that doesn't always happen. Police officers, like anyone else, they have families, they have homes, they have second jobs and all these things. And we do our best to try and accommodate all of them, Again, it's not like when I came on the police department, where most of us came out of the military, went right in, and they said jump, and we said how high, Today's police officer is much, much different. You need to be sensitive to the fact that, again, they have child care issues. They have issues like anybody else does. And as managers, we have to be sensitive to that because that makes a better employee. A happy employee is usually a better employee.
Oh, yeah.
So, in that sense, will an officer stay on the same beat for a year? They may not. But most of the officers that work in 24 like working in 24. They're up here because they want to be. They enjoy, the diversity of this district, and it's probably one of the most diverse districts in the whole city. So with that being said, we've got really a good situation up here. Commander Mike Wick, is just a tremendous leader. Mike was a captain here for about 5 years. He knows the district. He knows the people. He's very good at managing the people. He's easy to get along with. He's very bright. So, again, it's really a good situation up here.
Yeah, he's very good to work with. I never have any problems with him.
Sure.
As a matter of fact, I'm kind of surprised sometimes. I actually called him a couple of times when he was on furlough and fishing. And and he actually helped me with my problems,
Sure.
which was terrific. Even
Sure.
though he was on a boat,
Sure, right.
Casty. I've got a dumb question. One of the more interesting things I've ever heard about, TV shows. People watch TV shows. I know
Sure.
at the campus meetings, like people start saying stuff, and it's pretty obvious that they've been watching Law and Order in terms of what they think the law really is. And
Sure.
Hank Jacob is the one that originally pointed that out. Did you find, in general, that what people see about police on TV really has an effect on their perception? Or?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the first thing that always struck me about television shows depicting the police is how they can, there's a murder at the beginning, and with commercials, about 47 minutes, they've got it solved, and it's already through the court system. A homicide investigation is a very lengthy, detailed type of investigation, and we do things right here in Chicago. I always found the two most realistic police shows, and I may be dating myself a little bit, but that's okay, were Dragnet and Barney Miller. Because Dragnet showed some of the boredom in police work, and police work at times can be boring. It can be as boring as you make it, because there are a lot of lulls where, or we call it discretionary time, which is time that our officers have to work on problems on their beats, and that's what we expect them to do. Barney Miller showed the humor in police work, because if you don't laugh all the time, you go crazy on this job, because you see some really horrendous things, and those are things you really don't want to bring home with you. So, you see policemen laughing. I know a lot of times we're criticized, they'll show a crime scene and they'll show policemen smiling or laughing. And people will be saying, well, what are they laughing about? Two people were just killed. Well, that's how we release tension a lot, through humor. So I found those two to be the most realistic. There's a new show coming out. It'll be out already by the time this is aired, called The Chicago Code, which is filmed in Chicago. I'm very interested to see that, But be that as it may, most people's perception of television shows, become their reality. Are there any really realistic television shows about police? I don't know. I always liked Hill Street Blues because it was very well written. It was very thoughtful. Did it really depict what we did on a day-to-day basis? No, not really. But, real life is very difficult to imitate many times.
When I was actually reporting on police matters, I made it a point to never watch a police show because I found it started affecting me in a way it shouldn't have. I wanted to find out the reality of the situation and not the TV perception. By the way, Steve Cohen also told me that Barney Miller was the most realistic show he...
Well, like I say, because, we laugh a lot, and that's great. That's great when I see policemen laughing. Because, again, if you didn't rely, you'd go home and drink or some crazy thing like that, it can be a very demanding. And in Area 3, we don't experience the violence that they do in other areas of the city. And for that, we're very fortunate. But be that as it may, as we found out July 2nd of 2008 when Officer Rick Francis was killed at Belmont and Western, it's just as dangerous to be a police officer in Area 3 as it is anywhere in the city, and we always remind our folks of that, that you can never let your guard down, that every stop is a potential felony stop, and always be on their toes, to never let down, because the pace is a little bit slower up here. You still can't let down. So far, it's been a bad year for police officers again in terms of deaths nationwide, and that's not something that's lost on our police officers. Now all of our officers, wear body armor, which is a terrific thing. When I started, we never had any of that stuff. I think I knew one guy who wore body armor, and they kind of looked at him strange, But again, it's part of our culture now. All of our officers wear their seatbelts, which I'm really, really glad. One of my responsibilities is head of the Traffic Review Board. I review every accident in the police department under certain circumstances, that is. And we're so exposed because we're out there 24/7. Our officers are bound to get in accidents, But we had a lot more injuries when they weren't wearing seatbelts. Now everybody wears a seatbelt, so that's really a good thing.
Thank God. I'm glad to hear that. How are you finding Area 3?
Area 3 is a terrific place to work. I've spent most of my career in Area 3. I had a short stint on
we
the
should
west
give
side.
people the boundaries of it.
Area 3 basically goes from Fullerton Avenue on the south to the city limits on the north, from the lakefront to basically Kedzie Avenue on the west. It encompasses 4 police districts, the 19th district at Belmont and Western, the 20th district in the 5400 block of North Lincoln, the 23rd district, which incidentally just opened a new station at 850 West Addison, and the 24th district, of course, is 6464 North Clark Street. So that's 4 police districts, and it's just a terrific place to work. because of all the variety, of it, all the diversity. I mean, you have multi-million-dollar homes up here. You have low-income housing. If you're hungry, there's 70 different ethnicities to choose from to eat. It's a very vibrant, lively community. And again, most officers work up here by choice. They want to work up here. We've got a lot of officers who worked on the west side and south side for years and years and wanted maybe a slightly slower pace or a little more challenging pace, if you would. Crime up here isn't as in your face as it may be in some other communities. That means the officer has to dig a little bit harder, has to make more street stops, has to do things like that. So we challenge our officers to do those things up here. But Area 3 is the best group of police officers I've ever worked with.
Oh, that's terrific. How many people do you have on staff now at the Area 3 headquarters?
Now I have, are you testing me? Or?
No, I'm just curious. I mean, I always see it. It's on Belmont and Western.
Yeah, well, right now we're down to a sergeant and 2 police officers in the office. We did have a sergeant and a lieutenant, a sergeant, and 4 police officers. Now we're down to a sergeant and 2 police officers.
Right. So basically, you lost Donnie, you lost Steve, you lost Hank.
I lost Steve, Hank, and then 2 other of my staff. I had to go
and
back
Sergeant
to
Welble.
Welble, right. Well, I was able to replace Sergeant Welble with Sergeant Karen Conway, who worked in 24. She was a tactical sergeant. She was a gang officer. She's got a lot of street experience, and she came back to 24 from an administrative position downtown. I was able to coax her into coming in to work for me, But be that as it may, what we've done is we've taken a lot of our teams that we had on an area level and put them back in the district as well. There was just an inquiry by a media member about our 23rd district, which experienced several shootings over the last month or so. And he had heard that we were taking resources out of there and putting them in other parts of the city, and nothing could be further from the truth. If anything, we've put more resources back into not only the 23rd district, but all the districts up here, because again, we disbanded a few of the area teams that I had. The officers were all detailed to my district. In other words, they weren't assigned there. They were detailed from different districts within the area, and they all went back there. So that's approximately 30 police officers who we were able to put back into the area, and 3 sergeants. So nobody's going anywhere from Area 3 out of the area.
No, that's good. One of the people, one of the things I want to favorably comment on Sergeant Welble also, as long as I was throwing out roses to a bunch of people, because he was besides for being the cap sergeant for 2411 when Kieskatarowski was running things, right. He also was very instrumental in creating the plan to help protect synagogues and the Jewish community during holidays.
Yeah, Dave, of course, Dave, you know Dave, and Dave's late parents were both Holocaust survivors. Dave has a lot of family in Israel. Dave was actually born in Israel.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, yeah. He moved here when he was 4 years old and has a lot of family back there. Dave is not only a good person, but was a very smart, very intelligent guy. He had a lot of background. He spent 11 years in the intelligence section of the police department. Wow. He was in the civil rights section of the police department. It's like I say, you never had a bad job, Dave, So he brought all that experience here, and he loved being a beat sergeant. I mean, he just loved being on the street and being out here. He worked the afternoon shift, as you know. Then he went to the day shift. So he was a very valuable, person to have, and a great friend.
Anyway, we want to wish you luck in your retirement, Sergeant Welble. In any event, Mickey's hands are about there.
Okay.
So I want to thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Deputy Chief Bruce Rottner of the Chicago Police Department. If you'd like to get in touch with the police, you can call 911. If it's not an emergency, you can call 311.
Right.
And I still want to urge you to attend your community policing meetings. I want to thank Sonny Hirsch, our entire technical crew, who is in his spare time is chairman of the District Advisory Committee of the 24th District. And I want to express my own personal thanks and those of other people for the wonderful work the Chicago Police Department does for the citizens of Chicago. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Avi.